Many thanks for joining us. You're watching OBN Horn of Africa. This is Talk to OBN show. Today we're going to talk about HR 6600 draft bill proposed by the US Congress, and joined by Professor Lawrence Freeman. Professor, thank you for joining me.
I'm happy to be with you.
All right. What's your comment on the HR 6600 draft bill proposed by the US Congress?
This bill has been approved, House Resolution 6600, the Ethiopian Stabilization, Peace and Democracy Act is what it's called. It has now been voted out of the House Foreign Relations Committee on a bipartisan basis, which means both Republicans and Democrats support it, including the chairman of the committee, Congressman Meeks, and the ranking minority Republican member, Rich. They have both now endorsed it, and it can be called up to the floor of the House by the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, at any time. It's at her discretion. This is a very strong attack on Ethiopia. It outlines what the United States considers Ethiopia must do in terms of a ceasefire, in terms of a dialogue, in terms of negotiation with the TPLF. And it outlines the fact that if crimes against humanity or genocide have occurred, that the US government will move for very strong sanctions internationally. And they include the United Nations Security Council, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the African Union, and they will work with the IMF and the World Bank and other multinational bank institutions around the world to deny Ethiopia assistance, and that the United States itself will cut off security assistance and other assistance. This is a very strong attack, primarily aimed almost exclusively at Ethiopia. And there's also a bill, a Senate resolution, Senate Resolution 3199, which has not been voted out of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee from last year, but it is very similar. And it's also the democracy, it also includes the same direction. And they all focus on the accountability of Ethiopia, that there must be a movement of democracy, human rights violations have to be discussed, and of course, genocide and crimes against humanity. So here you have the United States Congress dictating to Ethiopia what its policy must be, and if it's not done that way, then these sanctions will follow. My information is that this has the support of the White House, which would be President Joe Biden, and the State Department, Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State.
Okay, the US government used to dictate Ethiopia on the do's and don'ts so far, including requesting the federal government to undergo a ceasefire and giving access to humanitarian activities and holding a national dialogue among contesting political entities. But the government has done all this. Why they lately come up with this draft bill to impose sanction against Ethiopia?
The State Department and the White House are telling the Ethiopian government that we will move forward to resume a more cooperative, normal relationship between the United States and Ethiopia if you do what we tell you. And they're instructing leaders and representatives of the government of Ethiopia what to do. You make these concessions, you do what we tell you. Otherwise, if you do not, if you disobey us, if you don't follow our dictates, then we will go ahead with the House Resolution 6600 and possibly the one in the Senate. The intention is for the US, guided by geopolitical doctrine, to maintain control of the Horn of Africa. And the concern of these geopolitics devotees, fanatics, zealots, is that an independent Ethiopia under an independent-minded Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and an independent Eritrea under its President Isaias, combining with a relationship with Somalia, that these leaders of these countries would control the Horn of Africa, not the US and the West and the geopolitics, because the Horn of Africa is critical because it has the east coast of Africa. You have the Indian Ocean leading into the Gulf of Eden, leading into the Red Sea to the Suez Canal. This important waterway has to be under the control of the geopolitical doctrine, not under the control of independent nation states such as Ethiopia.
The very popular Ethiopian Herald newspaper reported that HR 6600 bill most malicious humanitarian imperialism. This is an insight given by American political analyst Andrew Corey Bacco. Do you agree?
Well, I think we can be more precise than that. We know that there are people in the West, and they have their representatives' influence in every Western government. Governments like mine, the United States, they're not homogeneous. They're not one unified bloc. And there are people in the United States government who believe that their control of the Horn of Africa is primary. And they believe that their democracy and their human rights conceptions have to be implemented. Now, this is not everybody in the US government, but right now, this is the leading edge of the State Department, which is pulling Biden in this direction. And therefore, he's going along with this. I doubt if he knows much about what's going on in Ethiopia or Africa, because he's now involved in trying to face down and force an invasion in Ukraine, which is also a geopolitical policy to weaken Russia, just like our policy is to weaken China. So therefore, we have to look at those people in the government and that policy that's aimed at Ethiopia. My concern is that the Ethiopian government is going along with what we call in the US hard cop, soft cop. The State Department comes in and says, oh no, we want to resume good relations with Ethiopia. Don't do anything that disrupts good relations with Ethiopia. And then the hard cop is, but we have these people in the House and the Senate, they want to do a lot more. We really want to make things better again. That's called hard cop, soft cop. And my concern is that the Ethiopian government doesn't understand this and is going to continue be forced to make concessions and not realizing that the aim of the policy is to weaken the government of Abiy Ahmed and to strengthen ethnicity and the TPLF throughout Ethiopia.
Okay, the draft bill is proposed by the US Congress personalities. Still, it needs the approval of the Senate. Can we say the Senate hasn't got any consent about this draft bill in the very first place? What does it mean by it?
No, the bill has now passed the House Foreign Relations Committee. That means 12, 16 people on that committee have voted it up positively. Now it goes to the floor of the House, not the Senate. It has to be voted on by all several hundred, 400 and some odd House representatives of both parties. Whether that bill makes it to the floor of the House for a vote totally depends on Nancy Pelosi. She has complete control over which bills are voted on. So far, that bill, HR 6600, has not been brought to the House for a full vote. There's a separate bill in the Senate, 3199, which has not even passed the committee of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. But the two bills, although they're not identical, are comparable. And therefore, if Ethiopia were to not follow the direction and orders from Secretary of State Blinken and others, then the White House and State Department would go ahead and push for the vote on these bills. and then they have brutal sanctions against Ethiopia.
Well, Ethiopia is ushering a national dialogue, and this has been requested by the U.S. government for about so many months since the war outbroken in the north. Let me quote what the spokesperson of Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia, Ambassador Dina Mufti, told to Ethiopian news agency. He said, HR 6600 bill passed by the United States Congress threatens to regress the peace initiatives that the government of Ethiopia has been undertaking so far, said Ambassador Dina Mufti. Of course, you've said a lot about the impact and the magnitude of threatening Ethiopia's peace initiatives being undergone development in Ethiopia, right? What is your take up on what Ambassador Dina Mufti has said?
Yes, I met Dina Mufti when I was in Ethiopia last year, and he's basically correct. We don't know. The United States has their view of what the national dialogue should be. I don't know what the Ethiopian government's view of the national dialogue, and then I know my view of the national dialogue. I believe that the geopolitical faction originally intended to have a regime change of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. For various reasons, including my own intervention for 2 weeks in Ethiopia and others, they are no longer fixated on that track. What they want to do instead is weaken the Abiy government, weaken the central government. So they may have all their claims, but who knows what the West believes is an adequate dialogue? Who knows what they consider an investigation of human rights and genocide? They will keep these issues over the heads of the Abiy government to force more and more concessions, or then bring in the big guns, which would be this punishing sanction bill, HR 6600.
The bill needs to be approved by the House, as you've said. So do you think the House will approve this draft resolution and enact a sanction upon Ethiopia? And what ought to be done from the side of Ethiopian government to avert this very harsh and threatening imposition?
Well, it's entirely, completely, 100% politically in the hands of the Democrats. If the president, who's the leader of the Democratic Party, President Biden, and the State Department say, we want this bill, then Nancy Pelosi will put it to a vote. And I assume the possibilities of it being voted up would be good. It's entirely a political question. So the government, Biden and Blinken, are holding this bill over the heads of the Ethiopian government. Now, the Ethiopian government should not be giving concessions to the United States and the West. The Ethiopian government has to chart a course for the development of their nation and the people of their nation and the citizens of their nation. And if the United States objects to that, then the Ethiopian government has to consider other alternatives for other allies and other arrangements. But once you begin this slippery slope of trying to appease the State Department and Blinken and appease the geopoliticians in the United States, then they've got control of you. They will manipulate you and dictate policy to you. So, and I don't know how much that Ethiopian government understands what the State Department and Biden are doing. They're putting forth the soft cop version, and they have in their back pocket the hard cop, which is HR 6600.
I have read the manuscript of your interview on Ethiopian news agency. You mentioned that HR 6600 draft bill is very harsh on Ethiopian government and threatens to withhold monetaries from even the World Bank and IMF, right? But
Correct.
these are your worries, but you haven't put and recommended way outs in which it ought to be averted from Ethiopian government side. All the details in your interview, you mentioned how much the imposition threatens Ethiopians' development, and it's going to be an existential threat. It will be done at the expense and at the cost of 110 million people and Ethiopian government. Would you like to recommend as way out as a political analyst, and what ought to be quickly done?
The Ethiopian nation has to assert its sovereignty. It's a sovereign nation. Responsibilities for its people, their development now and in the future. They have to decide how to conduct a national dialogue. They have to decide the future policies of the country. If the US threatens to cut off financial aid, then the Ethiopian government is going to have to look for other means and other allies to secure that assistance, either from allies on the continent of Africa or other allies around the world that are not dominated by the United States. The United States, the geopolitical group of the United States, they believe that it's a unipolar world. They are in charge. They dominate. They have power. They dictate. And they don't want that arrangement, their international rules of order, overturned. That's why they're provoking Russia right now. That's why they regularly attack China and China's Belt and Road, is because those countries and others could usurp the power of the unipolar world of the United States and the West. And this is what is being used against Ethiopia. Now, Ethiopia has to should have working relations with the US, but they should be based on a common self-interest of each nation. It's in the interest of my nation, the United States of America, to help Ethiopia develop, to see an improvement in the standard of living, to see an improvement in infrastructure, electricity, railroads, to see an improvement in the manufacturing sector, to eliminate poverty. That's in the interest of my country, the United States of America. That's also in the interest of Ethiopia. And the Ethiopian government has to assert its sovereignty and say, yes, we want to work with the United States. We have a shared common interest in developing our two nations. But they should not allow themselves to be dictated to and threatened by the United States and threatened by what I consider disgusting legislation. I hate sanctions. Sanctions only hurt people. They do not change policy. And the fact that the United States, Biden himself, unprecedentedly used a trade bill, AGOA, to punish Ethiopian workers, low-paid Ethiopian women workers. That was terrible. That was un-American. Now the Democratic Party-controlled Congress is putting forth a bill that will further hurt Ethiopia. I oppose it. It's un-American. It's not in the American interest. And Ethiopia has to articulate what its best interest is for its country and how it wants to work with the United States on a common interest that serves the future of both nations. And that's what they have to fight for.
Okay, the US government is striving to impose sanctions on Ethiopia for certain reasons. You've said the alignment of Isaias, Abiy Ahmed, and Farmajo will threaten the hegemony of the United States of America. They strive to enact sanctions to maintain their global hegemony, not to leave pathway for the usual world order. Can you just mention us those countries affected by sanction but resisted and maintained their sovereignty and achieved prosperity and development in the world? Are there some nations? Can you mention some? Or it's the worst scenario? No country could resist this imposition, you mean?
Well, from my understanding, I'm not a specialist, but Eritrea has been under sanctions for a long time, has been considered an outcast by the United States. I think in the Obama administration, Susan Rice declared him persona non grata. And my understanding is they've made progress on meeting some of the UN goals for development and poverty and education and healthcare. Look, China is under attack by the Biden administration because they are threatening to overturn the United States, usurp the United States power as the #1 economic country in the world. They will sooner or later become the #1 economic powerhouse, China. And the United States is doing everything it can to stop that. Russia is not playing by the rules. Russia's been sanctioned. China's been sanctioned. Iran has been sanctioned. Eritrea has been sanctioned. Sanctioning is an unfair, cruel method. In fact, it's an impotent method of carrying out foreign policy. Yet countries do survive. And Ethiopia is going to have to look for a way to avoid simply giving in to the dictates of the West. And this is, again, just geopolitics. This is not my country. This is not me. This is not Americans. This is geopolitics.
Okay.
And geopolitics wants control of the Horn of Africa. And Prime Minister Abiy is not under their control, and they want to bring him under their control.
Okay. Due to the interest of time, we're running out of time anyways. You're showing me some signs you updated it, asking me to update it. Thank you for your insight. Have a good one.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. This brings to the end of our edition for today. See you next time with another edition. Bye-bye. Take care.